Assalamu alaikum and a very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to yet another episode of Perceptive Learning Zone. And I'm your host, mentor Hamza Nasser. And in today's video, we are going to be talking about the concept of mind control. Yes. And talking about how it is an Illuminati agenda. Yes. First of all, I would like to talk about the attention matrix, as in how social media algorithms, they program your mind and they end up disrupting your soul. So often you hear this saying, whenever you tell someone that they're being programmed, the person says, well, gentlemen, I know what I'm doing. I'm just getting a free service. They think they are manipulating me, but guess what? I'm the one in control, unquote. Now, this is a deeply comforting thought, isn't it, my dear ladies and gentlemen? Millions of internet users, they repeat this protective little narrative to themselves daily as they are absent-mindedly, scrolling through their endless feeds. And, they genuinely believe, they literally believe that they are outsmarting a system that has been built by thousands of elite data scientists. But here is the cold, hard, and unvarnished truth, my dear listeners, that behaviorist techniques are completely, entirely invisible to the person who is being manipulated. Yes? Over here, I would say in Lahore, I guess this was quite a while back, perhaps a year or two ago or something, that there was a drunk policeman, on a bike without any number plate, who, when he was stopped, started hurling out verbal expletives and filthy abuse at the one who stopped him and the other pedestrians who had flocked around him. So, what is that if it is not behavioral control? Yes. And by the way, these policemen should be ashamed of themselves, right? When they, when the role models of the law enforcement, when they act like this, well, what do you expect from the rest of the people? Anyways, I'm getting away from the point. So what I'm trying to say is that this is not some new phenomena that has been cooked up last week. This has a very deep, calculated history, my dear fellas, and it has been done for a very, very, very long time in order to manipulate the vulnerable human minds. In fact, the whole point of this architecture is that it is intentionally sneaky. It is a completely solid, I would say, cold mechanical approach to manipulating human people, and because it is so algorithmic in design, fundamentally speaking, what happens is that it completely bypasses direct, transparent human communication. Now, this means that we as human beings don't get the standard social cues or the change in tonality or the red flags that are needed to truly understand what is being actively done with our subconscious minds. Now, social media companies, they did not just accidentally stumble into this. They actually deliberately designed these social media platforms to be highly addictive. And these are not my words, my dear viewers. These are the precise documented words of the actual social media designers who built the foundations of modern tech. They have openly admitted that the primary purpose of all of this was to figure out how to maximize your attention and how to maximize it, basically, like we're saying. So the question is, at this point, that you would ask yourself is that why do they want to maximize your attention? Well, it most definitely is not out of the goodness of their hearts. They do it so that they can advertise more stuff, ensuring that you see it and inevitably come back again and again and again, right? So they want you to buy more, so mega corporations now can exponentially make more money for pure corporate profit. It sounds like there's just a massive coordinated amount of trickery going on here behind the glass scene. So let's talk about this brutal warfare for human time and attention. And I'm going to throw in some stats and quotes just to corroborate or verify the credibility of my statements. Now, I call this entire phenomena the race to the bottom of the brainstem. To get people's attention at all costs by exploiting our most primitive evolutionary triggers. Let's say that I'm YouTube and I've managed to secure a certain amount of people's attention. Then you ask yourself, okay, what's YouTube's biggest competitor? Well, that's probably Facebook. Or, fellas, take the CEO, the chief executive officer of Netflix, who recently sent shockwaves emanating throughout the industry when he openly stated that the biggest competitors to Netflix are probably YouTube, Facebook, and sleep, as in sleep. I mean, let that sink in for a moment. You see, at the end of the day, fellas, the reality is that there is a strictly finite, unbending amount of time that human people have in a single 24-hour cycle. If you watched my last video, you are aware of the Imam Ghazali analogy that I talked about. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be pleased with him. So, if you are not aggressively getting people's time, someone else, some other addictive app or platform is going to swoop in and extract it. So these massive services are in fact direct existential competition with where we would naturally, healthily speaking, want to spend our time, whether it is our restorative sleep, whether it is our physical health, or real life deep conversations with our friends, peers, and contemporaries. So there is a silent, invisible war going on right under our noses to conquer and capture as much human attention as possible, right? They say, I mean, we know that there's a war going on right now in this world between good and evil. So your faith is going to take you in one direction, and lack of faith is going to take you in the other direction, right? The best attack is the one you don't see. The best war is the one that you don't know that you are in, per se. So if the thought process that went into building these applications, Facebook being the first of them, to really crack the code, is that how do we consume as much of your time and your conscious attention as possible? Now, I was combing through some recent industry statistics, fellas, and they show that the average user now spends north of 2 hours and 30 minutes every single day on social media alone. And when you aggregate this over an annual basis, that translates to a staggering 6.5 years over an average lifetime that is completely surrendered to an interface. So let's talk a bit more about the digital surveillance and the spikes in isolation. When I talk about surveillance, obviously a lot of us, including me, think about Edward Snowden, how he exposed CIA's mass surveillance propaganda. So you see, society has been gradually, quietly darkened by this massive scheme in which everyone is under total digital surveillance all the time. And it has slowly made our entire population incredibly jittery, anxious, as well as extremely cranky. The least little thing, it sets people off nowadays. Yes, you tell your wife that the salt is a touch lacking in the dish today, and she goes off like the bubonic plague. So that's people becoming more cranky now. It's making teens especially depressed, and emotional state which can be, I would say, quite severe, quite life-threatening. So when significant, inevitable life stress starts to show up in people's everyday lives, they are no longer, turning to a real empathetic human person for catharsis, for counseling, for mental health support. Instead, they are instinctively turning to a cold, soulless device. They're turning to those digitized things which offer immediate, temporary, and hollow relief. We don't have to guess about this anymore. The peer-reviewed science is crystal clear, fellas, like the blue sky. We know beyond any shadow of doubt that people who spend more time on, let's say, Facebook, they suffer significantly higher rates of clinical depression than people who spend less time on Facebook. It breeds a profound systemic isolation. You feel like the whole world is connected, but instead you are confined into your echo chambers and you are more divided than you were before. Your child is spending more time on social media inside a locked bedroom, living in a parallel digital universe, instead of spending that irreplaceable time with his parents, interacting with his siblings, and learning how to navigate real human eye contact. So many students that I've taught over the years in Pakistan's academia, they prefer sending out a text on WhatsApp rather than coming to you in person and having a discussion with you, and that shows the proof of what I'm saying over here. So we have already talked about in the previous video about the strategy to divide and conquer the family unit. So by more time spent on social media, families get to understand each other less, which results in more family breakdown, more divorce cases skyrocketing and breaking the roof, which ultimately results in poor broken families that ultimately ends up eroding the moral as well as the social fabric, I would say, of the society. Yes. So what I would say is that we need to remember our duties. We need to teach our children. This is where I really, I must say, I don't mean to criticize, but this is where I feel the elders, like the boomer generation, really needs to take, responsibility for this mess. You see now, my dear boomers, as being a senior generation, you spent the most amount of time in your life before social media came over, as opposed to, I don't know, Gen X, as opposed to the likes of millennials like me, the Gen Z, the Gen Alpha. So no one knew better than you when it came to a balanced life, a life with social media as well as a life without social media. So now you old geezers were supposed to inspire the rest of the people to manage our time and to balance our usage of social media in a way that was, sustainable. But instead, what I feel now is that you babas, with all due respect, are the biggest cell phone addicts. Y'all scroll on this, thing 24/7. And obviously, when you being the man of the house, when you being the homie, when you are all the time, glued to the social media, no wonder your kids, your grandkids are gonna follow the same path. So it's up to you fellas to set the tone. जब आप बाबे कुछ नहीं करेंगे, फिर naturally हम जैसे आदमियों को कुछ करना पड़ेगा. So take more ownership and start acting your age. 60 plus is that age where you contribute to future generations, to humanity. You bring the world on a parallel footing as far as moral upgradation is concerned. In fact, you fellas seem to be the most hopeless last cases that I've seen, barring some notable exceptions. So, anyways, roast काफी ज़्यादा हो गया. Let's move on. So, let's talk about, fellas, the curated lies of the materialistic screen. So, picture a kid who has just got the brand new iPhone 6, Then he sees someone who, subhanAllah, has the iPhone 7, and he says, you know what, I gotta own this iPhone 7 as well. So he's constantly exhausting himself by comparing his life with the artificial luxuries of this world. And it is simply, not worth it to compare your beautiful, unique self with the superficial luxuries of this temporary world, which has absolutely no significance before our Creator. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said that if this world had any significance, and that significance even amounted to the weight of a mosquito wing, the disbeliever would not get a single drop of water. So people look like they have a better and a much more grander life than they actually do. People, they only post pictures of when they're really happy, when they're really successful. They are actively modifying these pictures, I would say, to be better looking, to be, to erase every single human flaw. And even if they are not explicitly modifying the pixels in the pictures, they are at least selecting the pictures for the absolute best lighting, the best flattering angle out of 50 failed attempts. So people basically seem that they are way better looking than they basically are in normal lives, which is why they say, take a selfie and fake a life. So the real world, fellas, that happens to be the social media. So if you look at everyone on Instagram, you say, Mom, man, I think they're all these happy, beautiful, wealthy people, and I'm just not that good looking, and I'm not that happy. And I would say, stop posting everything that you do. Have we really, as a ummah, as a nation, as a community, as a global community, have we really become that shallow that after every 30 minutes or 20 minutes or an hour, we gotta tell someone that, I'm attacking a molten lava chocolate cake at a restaurant in Gulberg or Wadat Colony or MM Alam or DHA. Because when people, they see this fake side of your life, they will start envying you, and they will wish that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes those blessings away from you. And Allah has already told us that He will not question us on the day of judgment for the things that He has not given us. So, mate, why are you trying to make it more difficult? Why are you trying to make it more complicated? Men like me, no Facebook, no Instagram, no TikTok. Subhanallah, I remember a sheikh I met once in Scotland. He used to say that Facebook is fake book. He used to call TikTok shit talk. He used to call Snapchat the jal chat, and Instagram featured as fitnagram in his dictionary. So trust me, men like me, we exist without using any of these apps, so you can as well. So, you have to understand the trap of these filters, of these superficial validations. You become the literal product that is being sold to advertisers. Sean Parker, I'll give an example. Sean Parker, he was the former Facebook president, and he openly once said about social media in a candid confession. He said that it is a social validation feedback loop. That is exactly the kind of thing that a hacker like myself would come up with, because you are exploiting a vulnerability in human psychology. You can check it out if you don't take my word for it. So, what exactly is a social validation feedback loop? It means when you become a product on social media, you start to place a transactional currency on yourself. How much are you worth based on your notification count? Fellas, your worth is not determined by the number of zeros in your bank account or how many subscribers you have. It is determined by your connection with Allah Azza wa Jal. Yes, our journey is from God, with God, into the love of God Almighty Himself. So, that dopamine hit, it makes you come back and back and back again, because now it feels so intensely personal. It's about you. It's what are you worth? It makes you, falsely and dangerously think that your social media gives you the value of who you are as a human being. Wallahi, man, just live your life. I often say that there's always going to be another love, and there's always going to be another job, there's always going to be another people, another city, but there's never going to be another life except the one life of this dunya. And it is best summarized by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, when our Lord says that, and I quote, "The life of the dunya is nothing but amusement and diversion and adornment and boasting to one another and competition in the increase of children and wealth, like the rain that results in plant growth, which it pleases the tiller until it dries and turns yellow and is reduced to scattered debris." Chapter 57, verse 20 of the Holy Quran, right? So, let's talk about the erosion of society and the ultimate awakening. So, this short-term dopamine-driven feedback loops, ladies and gentlemen, that we have created, they are systematically destroying how human society works at its core. I went a couple of days ago to Beacon House Defense Campus in Lahore to meet a colleague of mine, and all the kids in the courtyard, barring one or two, were completely glued to the screen. So what's the drawback of this culture? Well, A, it leaves no room for civil discourse, right? There's going to be no genuine cooperation. It is going to foster rampant, colossal amount of misinformation, mistruth, as well as polarization. And make no mistake, this is not just an American problem. This is not just a Pakistani problem. It's not just about some, I would say, foreign political ads and localized scandals. This is a global human problem. So we are in a really bad, fragile state of affairs right now, in my honest opinion. It's like, the system, we are floating on this, we're floating on this drainage pool like a bunch of rotten carcasses. And we have this feeling that some messiah is going to come from the outside and bail us out. But we got to fix this ourselves. It is eroding. Social media, I would say, is eroding the core foundations of how people behave by and each other in daily life. And I think in the back, deep recesses of our mind, we kind of always knew that something like this was going to happen if we stared into our screens every day. So we have created powerful tools now that are ripping apart the social fabric of how society works. And I would encourage all of you, especially to the young generation watching, as the future leaders of this world, to really internalize how critically important this is. If you blindly feed the beast, my dear viewers, the beast will destroy you. It's a mechanical approach to manipulating people. So they have set up social media so that you become the product. And there are so many top executives who have stated before the Congress, and I quote, that we didn't take a broad enough view of our responsibility, and that was a big mistake, and we are sorry, unquote. Well, fact load of good that apology does now. What's done is done, but better late than never. So, what is the Islamic stance? How do we, as a global Islamic fraternity, how do we realize the grandeur of our sacred capital? Allah Azza wa Jal, He often swears oaths in the Quran, and God only swears an oath by something when He's extremely, extremely, extremely serious. So He swears an oath by time. You know that verse that wal asr innal insana lafi khusr illa allazi amanu wa amilus salihati wa tawasaw bil haqq wa tawasaw bis sabr, that by the passage of time surely humanity is in a state of great loss except for those who have faith, do good, and urge each other to righteousness and patience and the truth. Holy Quran chapter 103 verse 2. So a person's feet will not move on the day of judgment until he is thoroughly questioned about some things. About his life, how did he spend it, about his health, how did he utilize it, about his wealth, how did he propagate it, and more importantly, what did he do with the precious time that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestowed on him. So modern tech platforms now, they are seeking to steal this exact spiritual commodity from your soul for corporate profit. But Islam now, fellas, it teaches us to guard it with our lives. If you truly want to conquer and compete, then compare yourselves in righteous deeds, in good deeds that last forever. The Prophet ﷺ once said that a father does not give a bigger gift to his son than the gift of good character. Yes? So, race with one another, compare with one another towards forgiveness and towards the eternal Jannah. And as commanded in the sacred prophetic tradition, we must withstand the divisive traps of the modern age that try to, tear our homes apart, especially in today's era, which has challenged teaching a lot and which is also, I would say, challenged parenting. And once again, this is a public service message to the parents watching, that try to give your kids deen and character and morality and virtues instead of materialistic garbage that is of no use in the long term. Because the Prophet ﷺ said that when a son of Adam dies, everything comes to an end except for three things. Some useful, knowledge that you propagated. Number two would be some, some sadqa, जैसे वो आप कहते हैं, right? Some charity work that he did that is ongoing. And the number three is going to be a righteous child that prays for him or her. Yes? So we must preserve our family structures as guided by the holy verses, ensuring that we remain in the upright and loving company of our parents. So in conclusion, I would say that we must actively wake up. True human value can never be, I would say, quantified by the synthetic currency of likes, digital filters, or curated lifestyle standards. And real self-worth is carved out in reality through intentional human connections, through dedicated presence within our households, and a sincere accountability for the finite capital of our days before our Creator. So, the clock is ticking, and it is entirely up to us how we choose to make use of our time. And I will conclude this session with that saying of Rumi, that moonlight, it fills the whole earth from horizon to horizon, but how much of it actually seeps into our room, it depends on the dimensions of our window. So may God give us the guidance to navigate our affairs critically in such precious and challenging times. So that'll be all for now, fellas. Thank you very much for being a lovely audience. As always, your host, mentor, Al-Asr is going to be back with more content. And the usual beggery mode of mine, please don't hesitate to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you very much, and God bless you all. Assalamu alaikum.